Australian house prices will crash if Albos stops issuing residency visas to anyone with a pulse. Now that's a simple fact, guys. We know this is true because the two housing markets that most closely resemble Australia's are Canada and New Zealand, and this is what's happening there. All three countries have had an open border policy for many years now. They have tried to pack in as many new people into their countries in as short a time as possible because they see it as a way to make it look like the economy is doing well. If a person moves to a country, then they'll obviously spend any money that they're bringing with them within the compounds of that new country. So I'm going to simplify this now. But if you pile 1,000 people into a country with $1 million each in their back pockets, and then they go ahead and spend it all on buying new property, goods, services, then the country's GDP goes up by $1 billion. What the likes of Ardern, Trudeau and Albo also cottoned onto is that they can achieve the same GDP boost by adding 1 million people with $1,000 each in their pockets, or 10 million people with $100 each in their pockets. Because those three leaders have no loyalty to their country, or the people within their country, they could not see any sort of issue with this. The very thought that there could be a Kiwi culture, a Canadian culture, or an Australian culture that could be affected by importing loads of new people from around the world seems to make them feel very uncomfortable, and they obviously want no part of that. Weirdly, for me at least, these three leaders are left-wing party leaders. Now, I was always brought up to believe that left-wing parties were supposed to favour the working man and woman, but that could not be further from the truth in this day and age. By opening the immigration taps to full blast, the very people who are most negatively affected are the poorest in society. They're the ones who have to compete for housing, they can't afford to buy, so they have to go in the rental Hunger Games market. They have to compete for low-paid jobs. These people cannot afford private healthcare, so they have to enter the public medical system and have to compete just to stay alive. The people who are benefiting the most from all of this are the richest. You got the landlords, the business owners, and the property investing MPs. In the twisted world that we live in nowadays, Ardern, Trudeau and Albo crave more than anything else a good GDP print, even though it means nothing in reality. They can take this totally irrelevant number and make out like it's a great thing that they are succeeding because it is going up. Unfortunately though, the real determinant of how the overall population is doing is not GDP, but GDP per capita. And in these mass immigration countries, the GDP per capita has at best stalled and at worst collapsed completely, like in Australia. Unfortunately for the poorest Australians, Australia though is a special case compared to New Zealand and Canada, because those two countries have slightly, yes only slightly, but slightly come to their senses. They have reduced immigration levels, and immediately this has had an effect on house prices. Both Canada and New Zealand have recently seen their crazy house prices start to come down. Mass immigration and loose monetary policies have completely warped housing markets around the world, but in some countries, finally sanity is starting to slowly kick back in. Pricing out whole generations of Australians just so property investors and landlords can get infinitely richer was never a good idea. It was an idea that I could see the Australian coalition being totally happy with, because that's just who they are. But to see a so-called Labour leader promote this destruction of the poorest was a shocker, I have to say. Obviously, neither of the two main parties in Australia can be trusted to do anything for the country. They have shown that all they want is higher house prices, record bank profits, and the destruction of Australia's natural habitat to cram in as many people as possible just to keep the housing Ponzi going. I mean, that's Charlotte and Albo. He is another level, that guy. After saying he wanted to cut the number of international students, he has just raised the number of international students. And he has done that as homelessness is getting totally out of control and hospital ramping due to overpopulation is going off the charts. Albo has also decided to pour more fuel on the housing Ponzi by letting first home buyers buy a house with a 5% deposit. with the government guaranteeing the other 15%. And by government, I mean you, the taxpayer. So just look at the sales pitch that Labour put out about this before the election. The Albanese government will guarantee a portion of a first home buyer's home loan so they can buy a home with a 5% deposit and not pay lenders' mortgage insurance. The median home price in Australia today is $820,000. Yes, it is. And you can make it lower than that easily, which you should. 5% of that is $41,000. The last time $41,000 covered the 20% deposit for a median home was 2002. That's the generational scale of this change. No, the generational change is since COVID. You caused house price rises for no reason. Now you can let them go back down to pre-COVID values. That is how anyone in the real world makes something more affordable, which is what you say you want to do. You lower prices. But that's not what you want to do, is it? Instead, you come out with this insanity, which in any other country you'd be laughed at. This means a Sydney-sider and first home buyer can purchase a $1 million apartment with a $50,000 deposit with their loan guaranteed by the Albanese government. A first home buyer should now take out a $950,000 loan to buy an apartment. And they're making out like this is normal and a good thing. It means a Queenslander and first home buyer can purchase an $850,000 home with a $42,500 deposit. Mr. Albanese, these people would be paying $450,000 4 years ago before you ramped up the population. How about we just close the borders and let that price go back down to where it should be? It's not like the banks would be in trouble if house prices crashed because they keep on telling us about the record profits they're making. So Australians, have you ever seen such out and out insanity? Normalising these prices should worry anyone with children in Australia. The government are enriching themselves and their friends at your children's and their children's expense.
On year.
Why don't you want to be seeing house prices drop? Because if you're looking to get into the market, if you're a young person looking at what's ahead of you, you definitely want to see house prices come down.
Well, that may be the view of young people. It's not the view of our government. We want to see sustainable price growth. We want to see more houses come online. We want to see that rental vacancy rate go up a bit because that will relieve pressure on renters. And we certainly want to see more homeowners. And the government has taken action on all of those pieces
But
this
Minister,
week.
if house prices don't come down, doesn't that mean that this system is stacked against young people, that it's just not going to work for them?
Sure, and Dave, we may have a difference of view about this. I have a strong view. Our government's policies are not going to reduce house prices. We want house prices to grow sustainably.
Albanese, the man who has made millions out of investing in property in Australia, is trying to put a floor under the insanely high artificially inflated COVID house prices. He is also now going to have a pantomime roundtable where he pretends to discuss and listen to people's views on tax reforms. Obviously, he will rule out the one thing besides immigration that could put a stop to property investors sucking all of the goodness out of Australia. He could stop negative gearing right now. The practice where the most highly paid people in society can just keep on buying investment property after investment property after investment property and continue to reduce their tax burden and reap hundreds of thousands or millions in capital gain when Albo pushes these house prices up by handing out more visas to literally anyone. This practice pushes all of the wealth up to the richest and puts all of the tax burden onto the poorest. For a Labour government not to come in and immediately fix this loophole during a housing and homelessness crisis shows that this Labour government is probably much closer aligned to the coalition than any other Labour party in history. But what do you expect from a property investing leader? So yes, Australians, I'm afraid that it's not going to get any better while you have this phony in control. He loves the status quo because he is directly benefiting from it. If Australia keeps on handing out visas like flyers, then you might as well draw the line through 2020. And anyone who owned a house before it is part of the team the government is willing to listen to and protect. And anyone who did not own a home before that time Well, get used to renting, because that is going to be your life from now on. It doesn't matter that your forefathers built the country and fought wars to make sure you had a great country to grow up in. None of that matters. All that matters is if you are on the side that Albo has chosen to protect or not. Yeah, guys, who would have thought that Australia could fall so far so quickly? And thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all on the next one. Cheers for that.